really quickly, thank you, Mr. Chair, on what my colleague, Mr. McCormick, said. He was talking about whether or not you believed in transparency. You said, I do, but I need to talk about specifications. I'm very happy to talk about specifications. And I'd really like to talk about the fact that the special investigator for the General for Afghanistan, SIGAR, John Sopko, had mentioned that U.S. aid was not in full compliance with SIGAR's oversight efforts to the tune of billions of taxpayers' dollars being spent in Afghanistan. Why is it that U.S. aid has been obstructing SIGAR's work in Afghanistan?
We have not been obstructing SIGAR's work in Afghanistan, quite the contrary.
So Sopko is lying then, is what you're stating?
We are not obstructing SIGAR's work, and so if I could finish and elaborate. There is a question, since it is the SIGAR for reconstruction, and the statute makes clear that once you're under $250 million in reconstruction, jurisdiction for such a SIGAR, as it did for Iraq, would recede, right, except for legacy reconstruction oversight that would be done. So there was a question of jurisdiction, but even as we asked those questions and engaged on the modalities, we continued to cooperate. And indeed, right now we're working on 6 requests for information, 26 financial audits, and 68 open audit recommendations with SIGAR. We have
really quickly,
extensive working level and
right. Just really
high-level
quickly, you said that anything under 250 million.
That's in the statute. I'd leave that
Because
to
that's
your
interesting.
staff.
Because I used to work on some of these implementing for-profit partners for about 6 months till I realized that cash diplomacy was a complete failure in many efforts. And I had worked on a program that SIGAR had actually provided an investigation on in November of 2011 called ASI South, which is an OTI program, whereby they showed that the Afghan Stabilization Initiative, which in many cases would fall under that $250 million threshold you just talked about, had failed multiple times.
I think, sorry, maybe I misspoke or you misheard. I was not SIGAR, when it has jurisdiction over what we do, has jurisdiction over everything. What I'm talking about is the statute, which says that that office comes into existence with its staff and its resources when more than $250 million is being expended by the U.S. government in reconstruction. So since we're no longer doing any reconstruction, there was a legitimate question by the lawyers and others about whether we should revert to the situation where only the USAID Inspector General or the State Department Inspector General is doing their work, because that work has continued alongside SIGAR's throughout the period. And as you know from the hearing, perhaps, our USAID Inspector General testified that there was absolutely no issue with cooperation, and so we're now cooperating with both at the same time.
Speaking on cooperation, Mr. Sopko also further testified in April that USAID nor the State Department can identify how much U.S. assistance in Afghanistan actually gone to the Taliban in taxes, fees, bills, rents, and other expenses. Why is your office unable to identify how much money your administration is paying directly to the Taliban?
Well, this is actually something that we're in touch with both our own Inspector General and SIGAR on. It's something that every day as we expend resources, there's a question. We do not provide resources to the Taliban. We do not work through the Taliban. But it's true that when the World Food Program works in Afghanistan to feed hungry people, they do pay for example, electricity. So we have to dig into those kinds of expenses in a systematic way. So
will you then confirm, at least affirmatively commit to providing my office and this committee then with an itemized list of expenses paid to the Taliban for taxes, fees, bills, rent, and other expenses?
We will commit to looking at this question together. It is.
But you won't commit to submitting it to our office and to our committee?
To a specified list of what electricity bills are paid in what places. I think I commit to working with you to make sure that you get the accountability that is appropriate. Thank you.
So continuing on with this, as part of the mindset for the USAID, did USAID provide any after-action reviews with regards to the Afghan withdrawal?
We did. We did a kind of a hot wash, particularly on the question of the evacuation, given how many of our staff were vulnerable. We have 123 Afghan staff, all of whom wanted to leave, have eventually made it to the United States, but it was very difficult, of course.
Well, I'm very aware of that, given the fact I'm the only member of Congress who actually went over there and conducted rescues of Americans left behind by the Biden administration. I wanted to go on that. So if yes, you have actually done that, will USA provide its after-action review to this committee?
Again, this is the kind of thing we will engage with your staff and look at what can be provided.
It's just funny to me. Both Secretary Blinken from the State Department, as well as for yourself, Administrative Power, not only did you show up late to this, but you're actually asking for $32 billion in requested funding, and yet you're giving us a hard stop time at 5 p.m. because you don't want to actually allow us to be able to ask for the questions of every single member of this committee who has a right to ask those questions before we're appropriating $32 billion of taxpayers' money. As legislators, we are stewards of the taxpayers' money. And so the fact that you're actually not even willing to stay here to have every member of this actual body be able to ask you questions, what is so important that you can come in here and ask for $32 billion but not afford every member of this esteemed committee to be able to ask these questions?
So first of all, I was on time for the hearing. Just let the record show. We had an engagement with the chairman and the ranking beforehand, so apologies if it got started late. And while I can't make public the reasons that that I need to leave at 5 p.m., I'm happy to follow up with you later this evening and explain.
Gentleman's
Thank you.
time has expired.
I yield back.
The chair now recognizes